everyone, welcome back to my channel Luring HD. This video is about hookup culture and is dedicated to the younger portion of the audience, maybe 16 all the way up to 23, 24, who have got herpes in the early days of their sex lives and might feel like their sex lives are entirely over before it even has had a chance to begin quite yet, and who also might find themselves stuck and feeling a little bit of FOMO around the hookup culture that seems to be the name of the game on campuses in college. Now, mind you, this situation hasn't personally happened to me. One, because I caught herpes when I was 26, two, because I've never lived on campus, so I was never sort of pressured to engage in any type of behavior, sexual behavior, and three, because I grew up in Rome and Italy, where the mentality isn't really, or wasn't, about hooking up as much as being in a relationship, like from a pretty young age. Still, I have a few power thoughts to share with you guys that might help getting unstuck from the wormhole you are currently in. So first, there's this very interesting research conducted by Harvard that asked people on campus how they would spend their ideal Friday night. And they were given options including sex in a serious relationship, sex with a friend, sex with a stranger, hooking up but no sex, going on a date or spending time with a romantic partner, hanging out with friends, spending time alone, or something else. And 85% of respondents basically chose an option different from hooking up, and I think the top options were sex in a serious relationship or spending time with a friend. And so the research then goes on to acknowledge how there is a gap between like what actually happens and what is perceived to happen, which causes like huge shame and embarrassment in teens because, you know, they feel like they're not joining or partaking this culture that's happening on campus, or even worse, they basically feel pushed to engage in it when they're not actually that interested. So you guys might be thinking like, how do I know that these people answered truthfully? Like, how do I know that they felt comfortable saying, yeah, I would want to hook up on an ideal Friday night if they did want to? Which is what I also thought, but then you kind of have to make it work the other way around too. Like, how do you know that when you hear on campus people saying like, oh, I'm hooking up all day, every day, how do you know that they're not saying that just because they feel like that's what everybody else is doing and therefore that's what they should be doing and what they should be saying? So wherever the truth lies, I think the takeaway for me is that there's a very strong desire to comply to norms. When people, you know, talk about their casual sexual activity, like on the one hand to social norms that say you shouldn't be hooking up because if you're hooking up, you're a whore, or to campus norms that say you should be hooking up because if you're not hooking up, you're a loser. When answering questions around their casual type of sexual activity, people probably answer more according to how they feel they should be talking about it rather than how and what they actually do. My second power thought is we have to stop thinking about genital and oral herpes differently. Why? Because the two types of HSV that used to provide an anchor for differentiation, whereby HSV1 would happen on the mouth and HSV2 would happen on genitals, are increasingly happening both places, where HSV1 happens on genitals and HSV2 happens on the mouth. In case you're wondering why, the answer starts with oral and ends with sex. So when you feel like you're the only one living with herpes, look around you and look for people who have oral herpes, and stats suggest that there's going to be many of them, and realize that, you know, they're probably also approaching hookup culture differently than the straight jumping into bed with someone without having had any conversation beforehand. They too have to, or at least should, disclose that they have herpes before they even get to kiss a partner. So stop thinking about both differently. They are caused by the same viruses and the risk that they entail are the same, and they both require some kind of conversation before, you know, engaging in sexual activity, and partners need to consciously decide whether they're okay stepping in this situation. So the third power thought is that perception around herpes is not going to change unless we herpes positives embody that change that we want to see happen around it. So for example, we want people not to perceive us as gross, but we don't want to tell them that having herpes doesn't look anything like a typical Google image search of herpes and all the gross images that come up. We want people not to perceive us as promiscuous, but we don't want to tell them that promiscuity is not a prerequisite to catch herpes, since one sexual encounters that includes penetration or not, that includes protection or not, is enough to catch herpes. We want people to know that there's a lot of people that have genital herpes out there, and then managing it is not a big deal, but we don't want to tell them that, as a matter of fact, we are part of them. Think about it for a second. Having genital herpes just says that you have been in some shape or form sexually active. Like most of the 7 billion people who are on this planet, most likely whoever you're talking to. Woohoo! I've had sexual activity in my life before. Big fucking deal. Can we move on? You have it. You know how it is to live with it. You know what you did and didn't do to catch it. Don't let anyone out there who doesn't have it have the last word. Most of all if it's with an ignorant and nasty joke. And my fourth and last power thought around hookup culture is, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Remind yourself, the principle behind hookup culture is not one of compatibility of personalities and interests and beliefs and values or whatever. No, most likely than not, it's just attraction. You're attracted to them, they're attracted to you, you're horny, they're horny, you want to get it out. Boom. You might also have heard this, but the sex that you have in, random casual hookups is not always the best at all. By all means, we all get to determine what makes us happy, and it's only fair that you want to try it out and see how it works out for yourself. But my point is, very often there's a lot of people who partake in hookup culture, most of all young people, who feel that they don't really have a say in it, and they feel like it's an inevitable step to meeting someone that they will eventually get in an emotional relationship with. And indeed, it is true for some relationships, but it's definitely not the only case scenario. So if your aspiration is to find a partner that you will, team up with and that has your back, you have their back, they commit to you as much as you commit to them, and you're thinking the only road to that is hookup culture, then you are wrong. Just because you're not thriving in hookup culture doesn't mean that the prospect of you finding someone who makes you happy in life and in bed are shattered. Not at all. No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. So to sum up these power thoughts, first, do not believe what you hear about the pervasiveness of hookup culture. Research has shown that people hook up actually less than what is commonly believed, and more generally, it's a topic where people respond more according to what they feel is acceptable to whoever they're talking to. 2, start noticing people who have oral herpes around you and realize that you are not alone struggling with herpes diagnosis or having to... Lily! Don't marginalize yourself, because statistically there's more people with herpes than not. 3, walk the talk. If you want the perception of herpes to change, speak up and tell the change that you want to hear. Remember that everything you did to catch herpes was just to be sexually active, like probably whoever you're talking to. And lastly, if it doesn't work out, don't interpret it as a sign that your chances to find someone who makes you happy sexually and emotionally are close to 0. That's false. Hookup culture and long-lasting relationships are two different things. Sometimes they intersect and sometimes they absolutely don't. As usual, if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments below, and if you prefer to do so just between you and I, you can reach me on my blog or on my Instagram, also linked below. That's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Ciao.